Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. Tonight's guest is someone that has not been on in a long time. I've done several different shows with him in the past. What's Brewing? And it's the one and only George Brew. How are you doing on this crazy Wednesday evening?
You know, before we start, imagine living with something that affects your breathing, like how we've had to deal with as able bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
crazy right now.
if this doesn't tell you to stop smoking, I don't know what will.
Exactly.
But I give,
Exactly.
but Madison, I give credit to people that do because they're still going out the pub. So,
Yeah, that's very true. All right, but what's really awesome for you right now is that you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan and they're up 2-0 in the Stanley Cup final. What are your thoughts on this series so far?
you know, I, I hate to say, like, well, you're seeing what happens when you have a long layoff because really both teams had longer layoffs, right? Like, yeah, the sweep and the six. I think you're just realizing that Vegas is a better team than everybody thought. Right? I think they're deeper than everybody thought. I think your goaltending's better than everybody thought. And you don't really watch them because their games are at 10 o'clock at night. Am I shocked they're up 2-0? No. Am I shocked at the way they've done it? Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm surprised they're up 2-0 and the way they've done it is shocking. You're right about the layoff hurting Florida, that's for sure. With Vegas, Bruce Cassidy, just a fantastic hire coming from the Boston Bruins, and they're in the Stanley Cup final with the coaching change. And if I'm not mistaken, each time they were in the conference finals, they had a different coach. First time was Gallant, the second time was Pete DeBoer, and now uh, Bruce Cassidy. So that's something I literally just thought about. And wait, they were in four conference finals, so they were in two with DeBoer, right?
Yeah. And you
Okay.
really think about it, like, all right, so Pete took over during the middle of the year. So really, does that really count as but in his first full year, they still went there. So this is, Madison, there's one thing that I see on the Twitter machine that drives me nuts. And it's, they fixed the system to help them. Yeah. Everybody else who was an expansion team had the same kind of system, right? But they could have spent more money. Vegas has been helped out because there's a salary cap. That's the part of the system that's helped them because they're forced to spend 60, 70 million bucks on players. They weren't allowed to, to chug along like the Columbuses of the world were. And you have a motivated owner. I mean, something has to be said for that.
Absolutely. Something has to be said about that. And it's just an impressive run that they've been on, in my opinion. They weren't even favored in that series against Edmonton, and I picked Vegas to win that series. And before the playoffs even started, I picked Vegas to come out of the West. And did I feel great about it? No, but I just felt like it was their time, and they had a pretty good regular season, although they kind of faltered late. And you're right about the goaltending. Aiden Hill has been spectacular in this postseason, in my opinion. And I think the Vegas Golden Knights deserve a lot of credit with all the moves they've made. Jack Eichel's obviously paid off. And what are your thoughts on like Aiden Hill's performance in the playoffs?
Well, they really didn't falter down the stretch. They had that like little run in like January when Stone got hurt, when Thompson got hurt, when Hill got, take that out, right? So but every team hits a little bit of a wall. Unfortunately for Bruce Cassidy's old team, it was in games 5, 6, and 7 of the first round. But at some point, you're going to hit a wall, right? Vegas hit the wall. And the reason why they weren't favored against Edmonton, against Dallas, definitely not in this series going into it, I don't care what Vegas says on the other side of the street with the sports books. I mean, like with the media, nobody on Vegas had 70 points. right? You mentioned Jack Eichel.
Right.
He missed time this year with an injury. Mark Stone had another back surgery in February. Like, they really, I mean, like we talk about teams playing playoff games like for February on. They didn't clinch the overall number one until the last day of the season. They had to play all out to the end, just like this Florida Panther team. The difference is when you're playing from ahead and as you're trying to catch up. I mean, look, Pittsburgh wins one game. Florida's not even here. Pittsburgh doesn't blow the game to Chicago.
Right.
We're not even talking about the Panthers. Right? We probably do have my personal hell Stanley Cup final. Right? Like,
right.
Really. Like, with Pittsburgh losing to Chicago, did a lot. And they put a team into the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, that's like the what-if game of the season right there.
Yeah, because Boston blows. I mean, not to say, like, I would have been rooting, like, for the boys on the island that I'm boys with. But, even they would have known they weren't going to beat Boston. Right? Like, Boston blew it. Like, plain and simple. They blew it. Jim Montgomery wasn't, but besides the point. Where Vegas has a playoff-proven coach. Right? When they went in 18, nobody but Fleury had been there before. As from being in hockey locker rooms, goaltenders don't have anything to say. They're the weirdest people on the planet. I could tell you stories from goaltenders past that I played with that I know. You'd be like, really? And we were good, But, so he didn't have, like, the goaltender's not going to talk. And there was nobody in that dressing room then that had won. Fast forward 6 years now, right? You look at 2020 and 2021 losing in the Western Conference Final. Well, what happened both of those years? They couldn't score. Now what do you have? You got 4 lines scoring. You got Jack Eichel, who's the number one center they needed.
Right.
I mean, William Karlsson's your third line center.
And Karlsson... Wasn't Karlsson their top center in the 18 run?
No, he was their second line center then.
Okay.
Because but they were kind of like that 2012 Devil team.
Right.
They really didn't have a top line. They kind of had like 2 2s and a 3 and a 4. And 1 and 2 could, and it was matchup based. And I really think that year that line was the third line. Really think about it. But you got him, William Karlsson's got, I think, 10 goals, 10, 11 goals. He had 14 in the regular season.
That's crazy.
Right? You got guys who are almost matching their goal total. And Vegas has won 6 of their last 8 games, and Jack Eichel hasn't put the puck in the net yet.
That's a scary thought.
You tell me any team that can have their number one center and not put the puck in the net, you're home. You look at Edmonton, they're home because their guy couldn't put the puck in the net.
Right.
Vegas doesn't need them. I mean, they have 3 straight games of 10-plus players with points. And they, and Aiden Hill should have had an assist on the empty net goal, but, that's besides the point.
Right.
But, you're just, when you look at them, they're, who they remind me of, and I hate to say it.
Tell me.
And I'm going to, the 95-2003 Devils.
Interesting.
Like, they don't have, Jack Eichel's a superstar. 100% Jack Eichel's a superstar. Jack Eichel's not a superstar in the same respect. He's not the superstar that you think of in, like, Crosby and McDavid and Draisaitl and Matthews. He's one of the guys. and they play suffocating defense. They block shots. I mean, it's almost like watching a Torch team without like having Jack Eichel blocking shots.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy to think about. It's like a Torch team. That you're not wrong about that. Do you think there's a possibility the Panthers come back and make this a series?
There's a part of me that wants next Tuesday night, I guess. Tuesday night to be the clincher in Vegas.
Right.
Like I want, as fun as a sweep would be, five would, like, just to see, like, could you just imagine going on, like, Earth Cam and looking at Fremont Street when they win the Cup, or outside T-Mobile when they win the Cup? You're getting 5,000 people on Toshiba Plaza before every game to watch the game. And you got 20,000 people in the arena. They're getting 3, 4, 5,000 people at watch parties at Circa. Saturday night, I believe, they're taking over the Las Vegas Aviators minor league stadium to watch the game outside.
That's crazy.
Let's say if it is 3-0. How many people? They're going to have people on the infield.
Right.
Because everybody's going to want to be together if that does happen. If they don't, well, then, you come home and you do it. The worst thing you can do is lay an egg tomorrow night for them. I think that's the worst thing.
Right.
Just don't lay an egg.
Yeah, you don't want to lay an egg. That's for sure. And it's funny because I feel like Vegas lays an egg when you don't expect them to lay an egg. Like in Game 5 against Dallas. And in Game 3 against Dallas went the other way. That was a game where people were like, oh, maybe they lay an egg, maybe they don't play well. But that was one of their better games of the postseason. So I think this Vegas team's a little unpredictable.
I don't even consider 5 to be laying an egg. I just think that was too... Like, if you've watched every game, there's a lot of fluky goals that are being scored against them.
That's true.
Like the two goals Monday night, I mean, one went off of Martinez, and, one was like, it was 6-1, and like puck went right to Kachuk. Like, all right, good, you got to go. Congratulations.
Right. But you're not wrong about fluke goals. You've seen that a lot throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, and they've given up more than their fair share of fluke goals, and then obviously like Aiden Hill with the paddle, and he's made some big saves when they've needed it. I think I saw the staff from Natural Stature. Their goal expectancy on Game 2 was like 4.5 for Florida.
Wow.
Like they scored twice, and their goal expectancy was 4.5. Like, imagine what that game looks like if it's not 7-2.
Right.
And it's 7-5, 7-4, like something like that. Like, so I remember Paul Coffey in '95 after they lost. They got embarrassed in Game 3 against the Devils, and he goes, "When's the Tiger most vulnerable? When's the Tiger most something?" And it's like when their back's against the wall. Well, Florida's back's against the wall. And you saw them against Boston down 3-1, and their backs were against the wall.
Right.
Granted, it's overtime games and that, but they just got to take care of business tomorrow night. Just even if you lose in overtime, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Not inconceivable. I feel like the Panthers, a lot of their wins in this run have come in overtime because, like, even in the Boston series, if they don't come back, or even if Boston wins in overtime, like, it's over. Like, the Panthers, even in the Canes series, like, the Canes could have won a couple of those games in overtime as well. That series could have been extended. So I feel like the Panthers have just been great in this run, but I feel like they've also been lucky at times as well. Do you think they've been a little lucky here?
Look, I think nothing against teams being lucky. You have to have a little luck to be this good. I mean, you look at the save percentages that goaltenders against Vegas have had. Nobody's over a 9. I think the highest save percentage is Connor Hellebuck. That's because they went to double overtime.
Right.
So when you really start looking at it, yeah, you have to be a little bit lucky. The puck has to bounce your way. In Florida's case, it has. And you know what? Vegas isn't turning the puck over like the three teams they played before them did.
Right.
Boston gave the puck away. Boston gave the puck away so much it wasn't even funny.
Right. Boston did have some turnover problems in that series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the guys playing hurt, but credit Florida for getting here. They did everything they needed to do. Kachuk's been all world. It's just that now it's like they broke him.
Right. Exactly. They broke a lot of teams in these playoffs, and Kachuk, you're right, has been an absolute monster. I feel like if the Panthers win this series, somehow he's the Conn Smythe. Who would you give the Conn Smythe to for Vegas if they were to win the series?
You know what? Here's the sad part with this. I know who I know who probably wins it because I know how hockey media works. I know who should win it, and I know who's making a late push for it. So the guy who should win it right now is Jonathan Marchessault.
Yes.
I mean, that guy went through the first round not scoring, and now he's got 11 or 12. He's had 4 multi-goal games in this span. And that's one of the reasons why you really haven't had to worry about Jack scoring, because Jack, almost leads the playoffs in points with, he's got almost 20 assists. I think Carlson's got a good shot. Aiden Hill won't get the votes because he didn't start. He came in game 3 against Edmonton and has been lights out ever since. But should it be Marchessault? Should it be Marchessault? Yes. Will it be Marchessault? He's gonna have to have a Hideki Matsui clincher.
Right. And I think there's a possibility he does. And they did give the World Series MVP to Hideki Matsui in 2009. And you would have thought that they would have gave it to A-Rod with your making the case with the media favorite. But they went with the guy who had the best series, and that was Matsui. And in Vegas's case, Marchessault has been the man in the playoffs for them, for sure. So I agree with you that Marchessault should win, but we don't know if he will actually win it.
And the thing with Marchessault is, he, like Kachuk and like Brett, like the other Marshy in my life, they kind of play on the line. Under Pete, Marchessault didn't know the line. He took dumb penalties. One of the reasons why they missed the playoffs last year, because he took dumb penalties and didn't. But, he's found the line, he's playing on that line, and, man, the guys just love playing around him. The guys love. You look at a team, you look at Vegas. 5 goaltenders have a win this year.
That's a stat I wasn't expecting to hear.
5 goaltenders have a win. You're like, oh, we're good again, because we got our all-star game goaltender back, and he gets hurt two periods into coming back. I think he kind of rushed because he saw the writing on the wall, kind of.
Right.
But, LB comes in, he gets hurt. He started the season on IL. Good kudos to your theory for getting a win. Jonathan Quick has been the perfect backup for this team.
He has.
Everybody down the bench. If you see, when it's starting to go, everybody's kind of around him because he's got 2 cups. And that's what I was saying before with with guys who have now won the Stanley Cup that are on this team. You got Pietrangelo, you got Martinez, you got Jonathan Quick, you got guys who, and you got Bruce who's been there.
Right, Bruce was there 3 years ago, although his team did lose, but he's been to a final.
So 6 holdovers from 18 that were there.
Yeah, that too, including Carlson and Marchessault. Alrighty, the PGA and the LIV announced its merge yesterday. You told me that you're wearing your Masters hat, and it's funny because I had that written down on the agenda before you even told me that. So, what are your thoughts on this crazy merge that some people thought it was predictable down the road, but certainly not right now?
I think it came down. I think here's what it comes down to. Until we really see what this is about and what contingencies there, like you read everybody today, like I read the post today and saw like Ian O'Connor getting on the soapbox and this guy's on the soapbox. But then you hear Rory talk today and it's like, no, they're still two separate entities. It's just they're putting a ton of money into this. Okay. I think the worst thing that could possibly happen to golf was one of these LIV guys win the PGA championship. Obviously, that happened.
Yep, with Brooks.
You know, and Brooks was in the final pairing of the Masters, and you know, luckily he didn't win the Masters. But like, I think when it comes down to it, I think the one thing that I'm really starting to hate hearing is the sport washing thing. Like, the Saudis are involved in a ton of stuff, like business-wise. Like, I don't see anybody not using Uber because they're, you know, big investors in Uber or Twitter or this, that, or the other thing. Right? Like, I don't hear anybody. It's only when it comes to sports like we have a problem with it.
Right.
Now, like, if the PGA Tour adopts some team events, that would be kind of cool. Like, there's only really, like, in the real legit tri-state area, you know, take out the fact that, you know, they're in Rochester for the PGA Championship. There's no PGA Tour events in the New York, New Jersey metro area.
Right.
Outside of the Travelers, and that's in Connecticut. Nobody's gone up to that.
Right.
Where you've had a lot, like, I think there's, like, 3 women's tournaments in this area. You know, they just had the one down at Liberty State, Liberty National. They had something up at Upper Montclair. They're around. I think the women's something's at Baltusrol, like the women's PGA or something. Something's at Baltusrol soon. So, like, I think if you open up, like, this area again, I think it'd be great. I'm going to hold back what I really think. Like, you haven't heard the Masters say anything yet, what they think.
Right.
And they're usually like you didn't hear the RNS say anything. If it's just like, oh, they're going to be throwing money into everything. Okay. If purses are going to get bigger or fan engagement's going to get better, okay. You know, I loved hearing today, well, you know, these guys got the bag, but Rory was stuck holding. I'm like, Rory got the bag. Rory's had the bag. You know, so just because he didn't leave for $300 million, $800 million, like Tiger was offered, like.
Right.
You know, this PGA Tour is the PGA Tour. LIV is still LIV. Like, there's still going to be LIV. There's still going to be PGA.
Right.
Do I want to see Brooks play the Honda Classic? Yeah, I mean, you want the best players playing. At some point, like, something had to give with the whole thing. It just happens.
Right. Yeah, you have Brooks, you have Phil, and some of these
Phil's
other guys.
Phil's old, but Phil's still a name. Phil can compete once in a while.
Yeah. Right? He wasn't bad in the Masters.
No, he wasn't, but I'm not bad at my local course either. You know, like, that's why Tiger likes the Masters, because it's the same course every year.
Right.
He knows the greens. They could lengthen it as much as they want. The greens are still the greens.
Right.
You know, the fairways are still the fairways. Like, Amen Corner hasn't changed. Yeah, so they made one hole longer. Ooh. I've done that before. You know, like Tiger used to. Tiger showed up at Bay Hill. Everybody was fighting for second place.
Right.
That was his own course. He played there a ton.
He did play there a lot.
Yeah, like, I mean, when he lived at Islesworth, that's, you know, he played Islesworth, or he could go right down the block to Bay Hill and play. You think Arnie was saying, no, Tiger, you can't play 12 tee times? And then, no, he's going to let him play whatever he wants.
Right. And when do you think we'll see Tiger again? Because I know he's not playing in the Open.
Somebody who's, I mean, not to the extent that he is, but battled ankle injuries. He's still on crutches. I think he's going to be on crutches for another couple weeks. I think the next time you see Tiger in public at a golf course will be the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas. I think the next time you see Tiger Woods play golf will be the PNC Championship in Orlando in December with Charlie.
Wow, you think it's going to be that long?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I'll tell you this. There is a strong feeling that Tiger's 48 now. The senior tour is 50. I would not be surprised if in 2025, I guess it is, you find out that Augusta National has started a senior masters where he could take a card around Augusta National because, hell, they'll get, I mean, come on, people will still buy tickets. You know,
right.
People are buying tickets hand over fist for the women's amateur. Like, that's there the week before the Masters. So, Augusta wants to make money. Augusta's going to make money. I think Tiger could win on the senior tour because he doesn't have to walk. Like I was telling you before, my buddy was there on Saturday at the Masters this year, and he was following him. And he was like, bro, the guy can't walk anymore.
Yeah,
and
he
it's
looked...
a hard golf course to walk.
He did not look good in the Masters. He wasn't walking well either, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see Tiger play golf next year. Hopefully.
Part of me, you know what the sad part is? I don't want to say that, but I really don't want to. I don't. It's kind of getting to like Jordan with the Wizards. I don't want to watch it anymore.
That's not.
I don't want to see that guy and being as big a Tiger nut as I am.
Right. That's not the worst comparison.
You know, I don't want to see him continue to struggle.
Right.
You know, it's hard enough to watch him walk. You know, you really are starting to feel bad for the. You know, it's like, all right, Coach, you can hang him. You know, what was Tom Brady's line? And I'll quit when I suck.
Right.
You know, like, not that Tiger sucks, but Tiger just can't walk. Like, that's the problem. He just can't walk.
Exactly.
If he can walk, it'd be a different story. He just can't walk.
Yeah, which completely sucks. All right. One thing I want to touch on before we go. Denver-Miami finals is on right now. Your team lost in 7 games after coming back from 3-0 down the fourth at Game 7. What do you think's next for the Celtics? Do you think they keep Jalen and Jason Tatum together?
Part of me that doesn't want it to happen is the same part of me that's probably going to happen. They have to break them up only because this really hasn't gone well. You know, how many times can you run it back and just fall short? I think I really think the biggest mistake they made was, all right, so there was something going on in Ime, and then you know what came, right? And it was so close to the season, and you didn't really help Joe out, but I'm ready to be an NBA coach.
Right. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Celtics. So you think they should break them up? I don't know what to think. I'm like 50-50. You could argue that they should be that they do keep them together, but like trade Marcus Smart and trade maybe Robert Williams or something like that, or you break them up and see what you can get for Jaylen Brown. I would keep Tatum because I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet, personally, but I feel like Brown has hit his ceiling. Do you think that's fair?
I think they play a lot of selfish basketball. I think it starts with Smart. I think it starts with, I just think they're at the point where at some point somebody's got to just say, guys, what are we doing here? Like Jaylen Brown's been awful in two straight playoff years, and where you have like Tatum, who's I don't know. I think you have two guys playing the same position, and that's never easy.
Right.
That's the biggest thing they got going on, I think.
Yeah, that's also true. They also play both are forwards. And who, like, realistically, can you, like, would you like to see as a fit? Let's say they trade Jaylen Brown. Who, realistically, like, as a above average star or all-star player do you see as a fit with Jason Tatum?
Oh. So that's the toughest thing. It's like, what's the toughest? It's a tough ask because it's. Are you going to upset Jason by getting rid of Jaylen?
That's interesting.
Like, you got a guy who's coming into his contract years, his big money years. And, do you really want to? I mean, that's the question. Like, is Brad Stevens able to do that? Is he the guy to break them up? It's such a tough question. It's such a tough answer to give because you really don't know.
Exactly. I can't figure it out.
Who's going to be available? Who wants to help them out? Like that becomes the question. Like, you don't know who's going to become available.
Exactly. Like, you hear Damian Lillard be. What was that?
To upset Knicks fans, I'll say Julius Randle.
I don't think they would do a trade with the Knicks because they're in the same division. I was thinking Lillard. Was that, like, conceivable? Like, Jaylen Brown with picks, like some pick swaps there for Lillard? Like, I don't know.
It would have to be a big pick swap, though, because, it's not like Lillard's young.
That's true.
And it seems like he doesn't want to leave there.
Or maybe Jaylen for the number 3 pick in the draft. But then again, do you think Jason Tatum would want to be, playing with the rookie?
No. Who wants to play with her? I mean, you're a team that's been to how many conference finals now? Like, you've been to 4 with this group and you haven't won. You brought back Horford for what reason? You know what? There's not a good answer. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm really thinking the Portland thing was the only thing that came to my mind. I mean, there could be something unexpected we don't see coming that always tends to happen. Like, no one saw. Remember in 2013 when the Celtics traded Pierce and Garnett to Brooklyn. Remember, no one saw that coming. Everyone thought they were going to the Clippers because Doc Rivers went to the Clippers. Remember that?
Yeah, and those guys weren't exactly in love with them.
Right.
Towards the end.
Yeah. That's like the first unexpected trade involving the Celtics came to mind with the net guys. Or that the net picks with those guys going to the Nets. Like, that comes to my mind.
Yeah, what if you went Jaylen for Zion?
Ah, that's interesting.
Get the Dookies back together.
I kind of don't hate it.
Right? Like, obviously Zion doesn't want to be there.
He might not want to be there, and if you're New Orleans, you build around Brandon Ingram and C.J. McCollum, and then Zion, he always gets injured and whatnot. That's the case for trading him if you're New Orleans. In the case to acquire him if you're Boston in a Jaylen Brown deal, is you hope he reaches his potential and stays on the court.
Well, and doesn't he have to cater him before the game?
Right.
But like, when you really think about it, it's not the worst idea in the world, right? Like, get him something. He doesn't want to be there. He didn't want to be there from the beginning. New Orleans should have never drafted him, right? I think we could say that, right? Like that. You don't have to have a PhD in rocket science to figure out that he didn't want to be there. So, you think he could play through some of the injuries if he's someplace he wants to be. If he's with a guy he wants to be around, I mean,
right.
Just throwing that part out there.
Yeah, Zion's not a bad call in terms of like an unexpected player that could become available, and then I wonder if they would throw like CJ McCollum in that deal too, because if you're New Orleans, Jaylen Brown, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum, I don't think those guys fit together because they all are wings. It's kind of like the Jason thing a little bit. So I would wonder if New Orleans threw in McCollum in that deal, then you replace some of Brown's offense with McCollum.
Well, the thing is, you'd have to throw in a sweetener. There would have to be a sweetener just to make it so it's not complete loss if Zion just can't play.
Right. And then people will look at CJ McCollum as a throw-in at this point because people don't really think about him anymore in terms of a good player, but I still think he's a good player. I mean, he was just in a bad situation in New Orleans. So if I'm Boston, like I would consider like Zion, like New Orleans has a lottery pick, throw that in there, maybe a couple other future picks, McCollum, and maybe like a pick swap with Jaylen Brown going to New Orleans. So I think that's an interesting fake trade right there with some draft picks in it.
Yeah, there would have to be a sweetener for Boston.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so what were you going to say?
It would have to help him because you figure like there's so much money that's going to back to these guys soon.
Right, exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Boston Celtics in the offseason. George, it was a pleasure to have you on tonight. Hopefully the Vegas Golden Knights, for your sake, win the Stanley Cup. And let's hope we do this again soon and hopefully not long like the drought you and I have been on in terms of doing a show together.
Absolutely. I'm always here for you.
Thank you. Have a good night, Brew.
You too.